City Skylines is in the news, and right now it's in the news for, in a way, all of the wrong reasons. There's a lot of people on YouTube who are very excited about it, some who are very concerned about its performance, and in terms of reviews, we have some particularly scathing ones that actually come from the mainstream press, which in many cases is not what you would expect. City Skylines is, of course, an absolutely beloved franchise. I was there in 2013 playing SimCity, the new version that EA released. It was awful on so many levels. I kind of liked the tilt-shift art style, that was pretty neat, but at some point in development, EA mandated it had heavy multiplayer elements. Because of this, the game was always online. And that was because, by the way, they wanted to fix the problem of it being, quote, the most pirated game series ever. And in spite of the developers wanting some more time, they were not given it, and, well, SimCity, outside of a mobile game, is essentially dead as a brand. And so in 2013, City Skylines was greenlit by Paradox. It would be made by Colossal Order, who had since 2011 been making the Cities in Motion games, which essentially were a transport management simulator. And when you combine City Skylines with, say, Banished, you really see a lot of the modern city builder just explode onto the market. The game was loved, it was reviewed well. They expected 300,000 sales of the game. They got, as of the current year, 12 million sales. And here's the thing that's really of note. SimCity was made by a team of over 100 developers for Electronic Arts. City Skylines had a team of under 10 developers, which eventually led to 12 million sales. And while that team undoubtedly did grow to support DLC, it is a colossal achievement from such a small number of people. And now, 8 years later, the sequel is coming out. This sequel is made by a team that has doubled in size. Currently, it has a headcount of around 20 people. That's not a lot of resources in the grand scheme of things, especially considering this is now a franchise that vastly eclipses the likes of SimCity. City Skylines is larger than SimCity really ever was, even in its heyday in all likelihood. And this has also happened as games themselves have kind of changed. So Marina Heikkinen, who is the CEO of Colossal Order, explained this as being a platform-style update. Here's what she said. "We absolutely cannot have 10 years of City Skylines 1 content done for the launch of the sequel." And she goes on to say that what is there is those things that we feel should have been in the original City Skylines, but we didn't have the time or the manpower. So more broadly, their focus has been on making the actual simulation as incredible as it can be, and as we'll soon discover, it truly is an incredible situation. Now, there is a bit of a problem. CPMs have halved on this channel, and that does mean that if you want to support what we're doing, the best way to do that and get some awesome stuff in return is store.bellular.games. This is The Pale Beyond, the art making of. It is a big, lovely book full of art, full of explainers and, actual working concept art from our team, so you can learn about the game. Store.bellular.games. They are in stock with rapid international shipping. Thanks for your support. With that said, let's get back to City Skylines 2. Now, of course, being A, modern, and B, a game by Paradox, this is very much a DLC-supported situation. In a way, though, you can see how that's fair. 10 people do their best to make a game, and then they make more content for that game. They realize, hang on, people really love our game. Right, let's just give them more and more and more. More features, more systems, all the stuff they could possibly want. Now, in many ways, this is a good thing. This allows for niche feature development for a niche audience. I say niche, 12 million sales. And rather interestingly, the broader model by Paradox is actually something that, from what I've been led to believe, the people over at Creative Assembly have been somewhat inspired by. And while it's not always went perfectly for Paradox, I think it broadly has went a little bit better than it has for Creative Assembly, and I absolutely would implore Paradox to maybe get interested in the real-time combat space. There's a lot of us who would like to see Total War be disrupted, but that's not the point of today. Today, the point is city builders. Now, with the success of City Skylines being very much based on it being a platform with a massively long tail, they have put everything they can into making sure that City Skylines 2 is essentially bringing the baseline level of the simulation up to snuff, essentially trying to build something that is going to last for a very, very long time indeed. And really, from what I can tell, the people who are deeply engaging with it, they're actually enjoying the systems. The agent-based simulation is super, super impressive. It is very very in-depth, and a lot of features are way, way, way better. Now, as an example, while building roads may not be as good as a perfectly modded experience in the first game, road building is way better. There is way more freedom, and really so on and so forth, as they make the core fundamentals of the game experience a hell of a lot better. Yet, one takes a look at OpenCritic, and we see that yes, overall a strong rating, but 76 as our average score, 62% recommending. And what really caught my interest, right? So IGN, very broad audience. Games Radar Plus, very broad audience. They're perhaps not like PC Gamer, who would be very focused on the PC-specific audience. IGN, 6 out of 10. Games Radar, 2 out of 5. It's fairly interesting when you go through these reviews, because what do they come down to? They kind of come down to the thing that Colossal Order warned us about. City Skylines 2 offers the foundation of a world-class city-building game with a wide array of features, smart quality-of-life improvements, and a genuinely impressive simulation. But its promise is completely overshadowed by its technical problems, dragging a fantastic core experience down into frustration and disappointment. I have little doubt that this reviewer thinks this will be an amazing experience in 1 to 2 years, perhaps once you add in some of that DLC. But this is pretty rough. Some people may even think, is history repeating itself? Well, not necessarily, but also sort of. One criticism people have had is that this is a bit of an unfinished game, that it's essentially being pushed out before it actually is running decently across a wide range of hardware. Well, what they said is a note on performance and commitment to our players. We've noticed concerns raised by performance, especially after our previous statement with raised minimum and recommended specs. They say they believe in transparency and are going to shed some light on the situation. They essentially say, right, this is a next-gen title, and that does mean it demands a certain level of hardware. We've worked tirelessly to make sure that it does work on as wide a range of hardware as we can, but they do say that basically they have not achieved the performance benchmarks that they set for themselves for launch. They do say, though, that for the long-term health of the project, they think that releasing now is the best way forward, saying they're proud of the gameplay and the features of the game. They genuinely believe that it will be great, that it will improve over the coming months. But they did say that even with that, they do want to manage people's expectations for the launch performance of this game. And they finally say that this is a game they want to be enjoyed by as many players as possible. So in something that I'm sure will echo forward to our future discussions of Alan Wake 2, yeah, this is a situation where perhaps the majority of the people who can run City Skylines 1 now, in a fairly decent manner, will not be able to run the sequel that well. So they failed the benchmark. That is the benchmark they wanted to hit for launch. Many people will then deduce that this means that the game is in fact not finished. And while everyone's definition of finished is slightly different, it clearly is not ready to go on consoles, because those have actually been delayed until spring of 2024. That's a fairly interesting one. The GPUs in the PS5 and Xbox are fairly good. Obviously, a lot can be squeezed out of them. They're not going to be as good as newer stuff on PC. And of course, from the CPU point of view, generally speaking, in consoles, you are going for lower performance per core, but a higher core count. That typically has been the architecture they've ran with, so you could see that if this is a game that's going to be suffering in PC, the consoles would absolutely just get thwacked. This does lead to a month for Paradox Interactive that's fairly interesting, because they had Lamplighters League come out, and they basically admitted that Lamplighters League did not do well whatsoever. Also, of course, Star Trek Infinite, which, a lot of people would call a sort of reskin of Stellaris that's heavily inspired by a very, very, very popular mod. And in fairness, the developers of that game and Paradox, they've been pretty clear that that kind of is what it is. But it was essentially not that well received on launch. At least it wouldn't really rise to the hopes that many people had. So the notion then that City Skylines 2 could come in and be another rocky launch, that would really mean 3 rocky launches in a month, which for Paradox would surely kind of suck. Now you may be thinking, okay, right, well, if you're trying to run a game on a potato, surely, what can you expect, right? I think the worry that people have here is a lot of computers are now potatoes. For minimum, we're looking at a 6700K and a 970. However, for recommended, we're looking at an i5, 12600K, and an RTX 3080. So, a 3080, that is a relatively new card, right? pretty crazy. That 10 gigabytes of VRAM, that's also, that sure is something. And for a bit more on this, you can check out this video from Move the Mouse, who is covering what these presets look like. Certainly, you look at this very low preset and, oh, yeah, man, that certainly does look rough. The point here, though, is that you're scaling the graphics down, but you're really not getting the level of performance that one would expect from this visual presentation, which likely is the reason why they're saying that they've not been able to hit their performance benchmarks. It's hard to say exactly what would have done this, but I would imagine that there's maybe a few pieces of technology, a few techniques that they planned to have and either have not worked or have just been too buggy or whatever, such that would cause like actual really big game-breaking issues. That's at least what I would assume, given that they clearly had a plan and something has happened that's changed that plan. These system requirements, they have changed fairly recently. They've done this blog post. Clearly, what's happened is they have not got extra time to release this game, which will certainly raise some questions for Paradox, but also there's some things about this game in particular that are interesting, because this is a redesign of City Skylines, right? The very fundamentals of how it works. In terms of the level of simulation, they're going way closer to like actual municipal planning software. So doing that, but also getting real-time performance, that no doubt is a very challenging thing in a game that, when you actually think about its fundamentals, you're not able to use as many tricks of the trade, considering it's, completely dynamic, right? And when we think about the recommended specs being a 3080, but the most popular card in Steam being a 3060, which is significantly weaker than a 3080, yeah, things are going to be a little bit troublesome. So, can your PC run this game? And of course, Colossal Order have got the framing as this being a next-gen thing. Now, PC with performance issues has been interesting. We've had quite a few that have been from like buggy or broken games. In terms of raw horsepower, we've been able to sidestep quite a lot with DLSS and FSR, right? But when you think about it, a lot of games are just built for a target console audience, perhaps even also having to be able to run on the Series S. For this, though, being a PC lead platform that is trying to really push the envelope and make something that, can support 10, maybe even over 10 years of content, you can kind of see how it would be very easy to bite off more than you can chew there. In a way, for PC, then, we're kind of entering that interesting era where we are beyond the launch of the new wave of consoles. Games are actually pushing further and further and further as the top end of our hardware is getting better and better. As an example, the 4090 is a truly gargantuan card in terms of performance. The rather shocking thing about it is that in terms of performance per dollar, you know the way usually the more expensive a card gets, the kind of worse your performance per dollar is? That does happen, of course, generally with the 4090, but nowhere near as much as you would expect. They've actually had a strange problem where the 4090, I think, has actually been outselling some of the weaker models. I suppose it's a bit like how conventional wisdom would tell you that the cheapest new iPhone would sell the best, when I'm fairly sure it's actually the big Pro Max iPhone that ends up selling the best, or at the very least it generally has more of the supply problems. Perhaps interesting in terms of consumer behavior. I mean, there's absolutely people who will be having the best of everything, and if you think about a simulation game like this, and you target it to use every piece, just all of the hardware, all of the juice you can throw at it, you can imagine how far a game like this could actually go. Especially then, that's contrasted by a lot of the games that people play, the sort of forever games, they're not really big AAAs. People aren't as much thinking, oh no, I can't run the new Assassin's Creed on my PC. More and more people are playing those games, I think, on consoles, and when it comes to their PC gaming, like there's a lot of LOL, Valorant, Counter-Strike, right? Games that are designed to be highly, highly, highly scalable. And I think that's something that has been supported by all of the problems we've had actually getting good computers. Crypto coming in for our GPUs multiple times, supply issues, all of that. And then I think the rise of a lot of these esports titles, we're actually fairly used to actually pretty damn performant pieces of software. And that means then that, we're grumpy whenever we have to use the DLSS crutch, but now when the DLSS crutch can't actually save us, I mean, think about the Starfield situation, now people are really feeling the pinch. This is happening in a time where, of course, cost of living, etc. This is all very problematic, meaning that if you have a 2060 and the world is now telling you to get a 4070 or a 4060, but you look at the 4060, you see reviews for the price the performance of the 4060, realize it's basically just a DLSS 3 card, and then you think, okay, well, maybe I now have to find a used 3070. But all of this stuff is just squeezing you for money. I think that's why, broadly, we're getting quite sensitive about this. And then the thing is, you can play this game and it could be fine, but guess what? It's an agent-based simulation. You know, it's actually kind of all those little dudes. It's trying to simulate those little dudes. And that means that if you move from 1,000 pop to 2,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 to 20,000, your performance goes down and down and down and down. There are people who've been like playing the pre-release stuff, basically saying, yeah, there's times where I do just start a new city because performance in the old one has got that bad. And it's just that thing of the average versus the top end. Of course, in trailers and stuff, we see the top end. A lot of content creators will understandably be investing real money into their computer so they can capture gameplay that looks great for their audiences. That's a totally reasonable thing, right? But I think it does mean that when you look at all the gameplay that's out there, when you look at just everything going on with this game, there is going to be an expectation versus reality just slap in the face, I think, for people. Because as much as it's fine seeing a blog post that says, hey, this may be a bit of an issue, for loads of people, they're going to be excited about this game, they're going to try their luck, they're going to boot it up on day one, and they're probably going to be surprised with just how poorly it runs. And I suppose ultimately I think, man, this must be a terrifying prospect for what is a core team of around 20 people. Now, with a large publisher like Paradox, you'll have access to external QA and other facilities with your publisher. But broadly speaking, like, yeah, this is a game made by 20 people. You do wonder why the budget is not a bit larger, why they weren't really able to, to get more time, more resources. This could be to do with the company themselves, because actually, as you well know, sometimes you add more people to a project and the project gets slower. 20 could actually be their sweet spot for making the core technology of this game, because at the end of the day, for something like City Skylines, yes, you do need an art department making things, but at the end of the day, so much of it is going to be code. So much of it will be the simulation, and very hard problems like that do not necessarily scale. That's why I think you see generally less innovation in some of those systems in AAA, but what you do see AAA be able to index really hard on is an absolute boatload of content, because some things scale better than code, things like having a lot of artists and a lot of outsourcing houses. Speaking of outsourcing, often a lot of things do sort of get outsourced to the modders. Modders played a massive and very positive role in the first game. What has happened though is there will be no official modding tools on launch, and that includes the official map, code, and asset editor and importer. These will arrive simultaneously once they leave beta testing by the community and modding representatives. Also, there's going to be no Steam Workshop integration. It's going to be on the Paradox mod toolkit, or whatever it's called. And the reason why they're doing this is so that people on console can actually access mods. For a lot of people then, some of this is good or understandable. For loads though, they just enjoy using Steam to manage their mods. They're maybe not going to go onto the Nexus or ModDB or whatever, so this won't feel particularly good for them. And what's challenging with this is that there's multiple groups of people who all have slightly different incentives. Looking around with a lot of modders, I've actually seen people broadly understand this and be happy enough that these tools are like officially supported, that they're coming, that they will almost certainly be pretty damn good. For a lot of players, though, there is a feel of, well, this is a worse experience because I like the workshop. I would rather not have changed from the thing I've been used to. Then, of course, for the developers, well, they do want to do some things. They maybe want to ensure that some unsavory mods do not catch on. Therefore, they maybe don't decide to, let them be on the Paradox mod manager. They also want to be able to have mods go onto console. You can kind of see everybody has got slightly different incentives here. For a lot of players, they're just going to feel the negatives first rather than the positives. I don't think this is going to be a humongous deal breaker. I think people will broadly get over it. Paradox themselves have said that, they're doing things like version control, dependencies being automatically flagged, tags for features, playsets, comment threads. All of this stuff is actually going to be in the Paradox mod manager. But again, the point is, it's not what people are used to. So ultimately, where are we then? Well, we've got a sequel to a game that certainly is going to have a tricky period with its launch. I do think that the core here looks really damn good. I've been watching a lot of City Skylines 2 content myself, actually just seeing how the simulation works. To me, it's a really exciting prospect, and I can imagine, in a few years, like once you maybe add in some more of those content DLCs, this truly being the platform that they want, something where the work right now is going to stand to them for years. I mean, if you look at a game like, say, Stellaris, I know not everybody has liked every design decision, not everybody has liked every release, and, you know, you'll have different ratings for different expansion sets, but for a lot of people, you know, it's like there's two different sides of the coin here. How many times have you absolutely loved a game and just wished the developer made more of it? As an example, when I was younger, you know, playing Oblivion, I kind of thought, man, Shivering Isles was great. I know that they're making other things, but wouldn't it be cool if they just had a team of people who could make more things like Shivering Isles so I could just keep on playing Oblivion? Like, in a way, the idea of you getting a game and then maybe every year there's like a few bits of DLC, some of which are like fairly major. Yes, that would cost money, but at the end of the day, if you're getting thousands of hours of game out of it, or at least hundreds of hours, you can't see that being a really good value. And ultimately, you can see digital distribution and all of this stuff leading to an unparalleled level of product support and development post-launch, which for the most hardcore fans is absolutely a dream come true. I mean, hey, if you love City Skylines, well, would you not prefer it if that developer can just make City Skylines, make more of it for a decade, rather than have to, you know, fund their studio by making another game and another game and another game? So broadly, as much as I do understand the concerns about like mounting up DLC, getting, you know, really expensive, that creating, say, you know, barrier to entry problems, I think there are real issues there. Fundamentally, this problem is a symptom of something that I think is broadly good, because at least compared to whenever I was playing games, like, you get your expansion sets, and that was really awesome, but never really that many, versus what a game like this can actually offer to people. That being said, all too often we have the sequel not really match the fully, you know, the fully, say, modded or DLC'd up experience. I think one of the bigger examples of this has been Kerbal Space Program 2. In some ways, City Skylines 2 is this. However, City Skylines 2 does have a just very, very, very impressive core simulation underpinning it. So ultimately, I think this is going to be a great game. I'm a little bit worried, though, that Paradox have perhaps mandated this too quick. I mean, yes, that statement said they believe that for the overall good of the game, like, now is the time to go. And if you're going to take that in the best faith, it's basically just saying, look, the way for this to progress is just to get it in everybody's hands, and we will move on from there. I don't really think it's going to go like that 100%. I think they will take a bit of a hit, and I'm not going to be that surprised if this ends up being mixed on Steam when it comes out. You do then wonder, like, could a few months have solved that problem? Is this just Paradox really not wanting to launch in November, or perhaps just, like, really just not being willing to push it into the next quarter? Kind of tricky to say. I've certainly heard from some people that Paradox can be, well, you know, when push comes to shove, they maybe don't make the decision that gamers would want absolutely all of the time. You know, that maybe things could be a little bit mercenary. I mean, obviously the Lamplighters League situation is fairly interesting, but again, the game didn't sell well. It's not like the publisher is a charity or is under some, you know, crazy obligation to just continue bankrolling when the finances don't make sense. There's obviously a push and pull for a publisher, but ultimately then that's where we're left with this story. I think this will be a terrific game. I do, however, think you should probably wait on launch. We need to see thorough benchmarks of this, and certainly this is the sort of game where if I want to invest like 10 hours in a city and get it up to a high population, I'm going to feel pretty hard done by if 6 hours in, I can no longer have a reasonable gameplay experience in that city. In a way where it's basically saying, to continue with my save file, I need to overclock my CPU or get a new one. That does feel fairly ridiculous, but ultimately, this is a game that is a simulation. The larger and more complex that simulation gets, the more the hit in performance there will be. I mean, who knows? Can you somehow napkin math this game in big O notation? I'm not sure. Probably not. But certainly the scaling here is interesting. And I mean, God love anybody who is trying to do performance like benchmarks of this game. It's going to be fairly interesting. We'll need to load up a few different save files. It'll be fascinating to see what a massive city is like compared to a medium-sized one. But ultimately, based on the Steam hardware survey, the vast majority of us are not going to be running massive cities in this game because we do not have the hardware to support it, which for a lot of people undercuts core fantasy that they would want to have with this game. My view is, you know, I just want to know why Paradox felt that this could not be delayed more. This franchise definitely doesn't deserve to have a mixed release unless it's entirely unavoidable, given the original sold 12 million copies, and I think this game otherwise is a guaranteed success. I just don't really understand why it seems they need, or feel the need, to take that hit on the game. Like, is it purely just that they've had all the marketing out there, that they've had all the various YouTubers make loads of content about this game, and they're worried that, like, if they delay, you know, the wave that they've built up will just crash against the shore and no one will care and the game will release quietly? Is that maybe what they're worried about? I mean, probably, now that I think about it. Okay, what's it like for you then? Let me know, versus those recommended specs that are a 3080 10 gig and 12600K or Ryzen 7 5800X. Are you hitting the recommended specs for this game? Certainly a challenge. Because in 5 years, maybe these recommended specs, like, they'll be completely fine. Any modern computer will do it. But right now, oh, yeah, you feel the pinch. That's it for me. If you want to support what we're doing, go to store.bellular.games. Our art books for our first video game, The Pale Beyond, are in stock. These are really fantastic. It's the art and the making of. Hey, look! Penguins and words to explain penguins and how we did things. Store.bellular.games, best way to support what we're doing right now. Other than that, though, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.